No prophecies, no destiny. The new heroes of our time shall choose themselves. The Jantakai, the lands of the twin swords, are divided. War threatens every border. Crime infests countries like a disease, and the gods themselves have faded away. Beneath this turbulent arena, an ancient malicious power begins to wake. The whole world is like dry tinder, waiting for a spark. Old friends Elia and Nastya must rediscover how to trust one another as they navigate the underworld of Anish. Yain is a young soldier of Panagar, whose dreams of glory turn out to be a nightmare. Driven by necessity, their quests will force them to travel further and through more dangers than they could have imagined. At the heart of it all, a blood-red ruby gleams, sending out a siren call. A frantic chase begins, those who would possess it unaware of the danger it holds. Glory and riches await the victor, and for the losers, the only prize will be death. Who will claim the demon's tear? Hello everyone, and welcome once again to the Heir's Lair. I'm your host, Jonathan Taylor. Today's video, as both the title might have given away, and as last week's video, link over there, might have shown you, will be an arc review, and its topic is going to be Demon's Tear, the first book in the Jantakai or Jantakai saga. I'm not exactly sure how that's supposed to be pronounced. Written by R.E. Sanders, an archaeologist by trade and British by birth. Insert British Museum joke of choice here. Sanders has combined his passion for storytelling and his deep knowledge of his country's own history in order to craft and develop his own story world. Aside from this connection to the to the author of the book, what else can I say about it? Well, the TLDW for this review is this book presents an interesting example of low fantasy fiction. The stakes of the world are appropriately significant, and the cast of characters receives a surprising degree of both definition and development, to the extent that is available to them. However, I can't shake the feeling that there could have been more done with within this book and within the exploration of its confines. I do understand that this is that being the first book in a saga, it is only the first piece of a larger epic that is going to be built. However, I think this first piece had a little bit more potential in terms of all the things that it could have, all the things it could have presented, could have brought to the table. But ultimately squandered because it seemed to be more concerned about how to pace itself than how to plot itself. Strange as that might sound. Nevertheless, the actual content within this book is bound to spur the imagination of its readers, and captivate them with some pretty interesting content. So if you find yourself looking for a new voice in fantasy, you are quite likely to find it within this book. And now that I'm done with the general information, it's time I delve a little bit into the specifics of the book. The plot itself is divided between two main narrative threads. First of all, the first of which is that of a soldier who learns that glory within his profession can go through some very horrendous circumstances, and the second is that of a pair of thieves who happen to either luck into or become cursed with, depending on your perspective, a very valuable and very powerful artifact, which ends up painting a target on their backs. And yes, these characters do have names, and I did read them when I read the synopsis, but I'm not sure if I've pronounced them correctly, so I'm just gonna mention them as such and move on. By the way, this book could use a pronunciation guide, but I digress. The plot isn't just divided between two narrative threads. It is also encapsulated, one could say, within 6 different parts. Also, I'm pretty sure I'm the only guy who shows 6 this way. Aside from that, let's talk about the actual parts themselves. The first 2 of these parts establish the background, or rather the ambiance, the surroundings of these each of these narrative threads, also giving enough background information on the rest of the world in order to establish that that the action is that the action of both takes place within the same, and that they are therefore likely to interact. However, their arguably inevitable meetup only occurs right towards the end. I have to say, I don't necessarily think that this division in parts really suits the book. One could argue that having 2 different setups in 2 different parts of the book actually makes plenty of sense, because it allows a more fleshed out perspective on the starting points for for each of the lead characters. That separation breaks down by the very next part. So it arguably doesn't really make much sense to continue maintaining it. Another potential argument is that these parts separate the action by location for each of these narrative threads. However, looking at each individual narrative thread, I can't really think of that there is that either of those, when looking at how they also interact with the parts of the book, I can't really say that they that any particular location interacts with one narrative thread predominantly and exclusively within either of the parts. So there is plenty of overlap and blend through in terms of that. So even that division doesn't really hold. And even if I'm misremembering, there are a variety of one-off chapters within within each of these parts that take place in a completely different context, and that take place in a completely different context, and therefore break even that appearance of a location-based encapsulation. I can't help but shake the impression that the plot would have been better off if it just got rid of parts altogether and have the chapters of the book go on more or less chronologically, or have one event of one plot in one chapter, and then the same event in the in the second plot, from the second plot in the next chapter, and so on. That could have, I think that would have read a little bit more smoothly, and maybe even allowed the author to delve a little bit deeper into the bigger picture of the narrative. And I'm starting to realize that it kind of sounds like I'm harping on this subject, and to an extent I really am, because I have to say this is really the main drawback I found within the story. And even then, it's not that much of a drawback. It's more the author making a choice concerning the framing device of the story that didn't particularly pan out, or that I didn't think panned out in particular. But when it comes to talking about the other parts of this book, for the most part, they actually panned out quite a bit better. And I think pretty much all of that comes from the singular, from the singular perspective that the author employs when writing each individual chapter. Because by writing these chapters from, from a third-person multiple, where you're in the heads of several people, depending on what the setting requires, the actual characters themselves, through which the entire action is observed, end up coming to light, as their perspective is quite clearly showcased to the audience. Even though it is the leading characters who receive the lion's share of both definition and development, basically by default, pretty much every named character has their own set of attributes, intentions, and motivations, all of which clearly inform their actions. And they are all given a distinctive set of connections and their own, clear background, which helps, flesh them out and give them their own distinctive identity within the tapestry of this world, and helps cement why it is that within the whole world they have that particular position. Speaking of the world itself, that perspective and that way of writing also shines through in the way it, in the way the author chooses to world build, because pretty much the world is presented through this very immersive perspective, as the characters themselves also encounter it, and therefore they experience all the challenge and opportunities at the same rate as the readers would, therefore allowing them to better understand how it is that these facets of the world come into play. Of particular note here, and something I think the author has done particularly well, is the attention given to each individual location, in giving all of them their own distinctive impression, their own distinctive flair. One could even argue character, through the elements that characterize it, and through the grit and atmosphere that that has been quite keen on imparting to each location, and therefore better showcasing what it is that the characters who live within the world actually have to face, and how it is that they overcome the challenges presented. Because I have to say, this book does a great job at presenting the synergy between characters and environment, perhaps more so than anything else I read. There are a few small issues I did in fact mention, but really they come across more like nitpicking. So not really something the general audience would be concerned. For example, there's a scene where they box, and I kind of find a way the boxing itself described, or the attacks themselves, would perhaps not necessarily be plausible, given the way given my knowledge of the evolution of the sport, and how I see it presented within the world itself. But really, that's more of a nitpick. It's not something that breaks the story. Yeah, let the ambulance through. Fuck. Anyway, overall, even though I find myself less than impressed with the presentation of this book, the actual content that the author weaves through this story is bound to captivate the audience through its depth, dimension, and insight. My final rating for Demon's Tier is a 4 out of 5. And yeah, that was my review. Thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed it, well then please like the video, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If you have anything to add, either to the book itself or to my review of it, that's what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. My books, the first of my own Heir to the Empire series, Next Generation and the Path Not Taken, are available at various book retailers under their respective master links in the description down below, right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. Additionally, you have the option of supporting me on Patreon, where depending on the level at which you pledge, you will receive various perks, the specifics of which I will allow you to discover for yourselves, in case you're interested. I also have a second channel, link should be in the iCard above, where I talk about whatever crosses my mind that isn't related to books or literature. So if you want to see my thoughts, or more rightly hear my thoughts on that, that's where you should go. If you want to hear more about my thoughts on books or literature, then I suggest you stay on this channel and go through my extensive backlog of book reviews, writing advice, and lore videos, among various other things. If none of those interest you, then you can go ahead and do whatever else you want with the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. And yeah, that was all I had to say. Until next time, I'm Jonathan Taylor, and this has been the Heir's Lair.